And hello, my friends. I'm Dennis Prager, and on behalf of my colleagues, I welcome you to the show. Cynthia and Ellen, really a pleasure to work with you as always. The Biden campaign says correctly, it is factually correct. Here is a good example of where statistics can be accurate but tell you nothing. So the Biden campaign continually tells us that he has received, and the press tells us, which is the same thing as the Biden campaign, continually tell us, you will like this, that Joseph Biden received more votes than any presidential candidate in American history. I have a response. Can you guess it? Cynthia came up with a good one. Sean came up with so what? That's fair, but that's not my response. You'll like it. Ready?
Well, I have an answer.
What's your answer?
I'm not.
Oh, you're not sure he got those numbers?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say he got those numbers.
Okay.
Here's the response, which pretty much invalidates it. That's the point. It invalidates it as a talking point. More Americans voted against this presidential candidate than any in American history. Right? So it doesn't tell you anything. Once you make that claim, which is true, more people voted against Joe Biden than voted against any presidential nominee in the history of the country. So that, I think that ends the this boast. Oh, I got more votes than any presidential candidate in history. I need to share with you a thought and a feeling. It brings me only pain as an American to think that there was voter fraud. It's not. I am not a conspiratorial theory lover or believer or advocate, and I want to believe, and I hate saying what I want to believe. You know, I want to believe. I don't think in of what I want to believe in life. I believe what is, to the best of my rational faculties, true. But I admit I want to believe that American institutions, and nothing is more important than American institutions that count votes, are honest. I mean, Russian meddling is somewhat of a farce. It's a joke. But internal meddling is not a joke. Why is Russian meddling a joke? Because what did they do? What did they do? They took out a few $100,000 and Facebook ads? I mean, please, it's pathetic. I don't care if they took out $2 million in Facebook ads. There are hundreds of millions of dollars spent on ads. And anyway, what did they say that wasn't said anyway? They have some genius form of propaganda? America is not threatened by foes outside nearly as much as it is by foes inside. If America ceases to be America, and that is a very, very real danger, it will have been done by Americans, not Russians, not Chinese, not Mexicans. It will be done by Americans. This is a very serious issue. You go to bed where there's a substantial lead, and then all of the leads evaporate in the morning. In all of the states that are tight, you find that there is this gigantic number that has not been counted yet and it's always a Democrat number. Why is that? And always after they stopped counting? Yeah. Well, no. Well, not in all cases, but if you're winning by a serious amount with 90-something% in, you win. I mean, it's very, very rare that at that time there was this gigantic influx of votes. And why weren't they counted? Why is the uncounted always from Democratic bastions? Can you explain that? I mean, I don't want to believe. I much rather believe Joe Biden won honestly than anything else. I mean, I want Donald Trump to win, but I much prefer that Joe Biden win honestly than that Donald Trump would win dishonestly. I put, in this case, honesty is definitely above whom I think would do better for my country, because dishonesty in elections is the end of democracy, to use a phrase that has been used wildly by the Democrats. This Michigan Senate race, it's hard for me to believe it's not a scandal, because the thought of having this erudite, handsome, articulate, bright, energetic, young, black male as a senator is a nightmare. It's the largest percentage of blacks to vote against a Democrat since 1960. 1960 was 60 years ago. In 60 years, no Democrat has lost as many votes to non-whites as Joe Biden did, which raises the question, and if you believe he won fair and square, I'm asking you an open question. I'm not saying I have the answer, but here's a question. According to what the New York Times reported, which is a left-wing paper, according to what the New York Times reported, Joe Biden did better with blacks, better with Hispanics, lost very few women, contrary to what was advertised. I think one men, certainly white men. So if he only went up and if he didn't go down in the arenas that he won in 2016, and he went up in every other area, how did he lose? I said Biden? Oh, man, that was a boo-boo. That was a boo-boo. It's not worthy of the punishment room, but it is a serious one, because that really misled the listener. I apologize. If Trump went up in every category, how did he lose? He gained 6 million votes. But the Democrats believe that if you crack 15% of the black vote, you win. You have deprived the Democrats of the needed victory. So how did it happen? How did he do better than last time in categories? I don't mean in raw numbers of a total vote. That obviously, but that's irrelevant. We're going to have guests on who have theories on this and who may help me understand. Very sophisticated people. I am not looking to win by a litigation. I am looking to win through honest voting. It is not good. It wasn't good in 2000. It's not good for half the country to think that they have been deprived of a victory. The fact is, they weren't in 2000. Even liberals on the Supreme Court said enough is enough, that the Florida left-wing court was just playing around. Only one area would be recounted. I mean, that's a joke. It's so obviously politically intended to gain votes for Al Gore at the time. But this is out and out cheating. The issue was not cheating. That was a legal decision. 1-8 Prager 776.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Remember, the amount of time we took from nomination to confirmation was well within the norm. If you look back over American history, as you know, the typical time from nomination to confirmation. I'm glad that we were able to do it. I'm glad we were able to do it before the election, so the American people could weigh the consequences of handing the Senate over to the hard left, which is what the Democratic Party is these days.
You had to act fast after Justice Scalia died unexpectedly, and you had to act fast after Justice Ginsburg died unexpectedly. Did you have any doubt at either of those points that you were doing the right thing?
Not at all. I mean, let's go back to 2016, which the Democrats conveniently leave out what I said, which was that when you have divided government, you have to go back to 1888 to find the last time a Senate of a different party of the president filled a vacancy on the Supreme Court created in a presidential election year. They also ignored that Joe Biden, currently the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, was chairman of the Judiciary Committee in 1992, a time of divided government. And so he gratuitously announced that should there be a vacancy, they would not fill it. That was George H.W. Bush running for re-election. And then 18 months, before the end of Bush 43's 8 years, Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid announced that if a vacancy occurred, they wouldn't fill it. So, look, if the shoe had been on the other foot, I'm pretty confident that they would have acted in the same way.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Before, if 25 unarmed black men are killed every year, that's 2 per month. Again, this wasn't unarmed, but I guess it doesn't really matter. So we can do this until the cows come home. Meanwhile, more unarmed whites are killed every year than unarmed blacks. Name one. What's the chant they say in the streets? Say her name, say her name. Okay, say their name. Say their name. Name one. 50 million police-civilian interactions every single year. 11 million arrests. 60,000 officers assaulted. 60 killed. Which means over twice as many police officers are killed every year than are unarmed blacks. Say their names. Out of the 1,000, 500 of them are white. So the police are killing twice as many whites as blacks. And when you look at the homicide rate of young black men, 8 times the rate of young white men, it clearly shows you how the police are restraining themselves, because those numbers would suggest that the police would be killing more blacks. If a young black is 8 times more likely to be a homicide victim compared to a young white, and the police are, quote, only, close quote, 2.5 times more likely to kill a black person than a white person, it shows you how the police are restraining themselves, which is consistent with the study that was done by the black Harvard economist I told you about named Roland Fryer. He found that the police were more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger against a black suspect than a white suspect, tracking the findings that have been done by professors at Washington State for decades. You're getting people killed. Officers pulling back. Bad guys know it. I'm Larry Elder.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
either true or not true.
Hmm?
It's either true or not true.
I'm Dennis Prager, and I welcome you to the Dennis Prager Show. A lot of issues out here. It's a bad taste in one's mouth that there might be phony results. Again, I much rather Biden-Harris win honestly than have Trump win dishonestly. Honesty is more important. I here, for example, the Milwaukee City Wire reports 7 Milwaukee wards report more 2020 presidential votes than registered voters. Biden nets 146,000 votes in the city. 7 City of Milwaukee voting wards reported more 2020 U.S. presidential election votes than they had registered votes, according to analysis of results and Secretary of State files. 5 of them are in the city's 11th Aldermanic Ward on the city's far southwest side. Vice President Joe Biden carried the 5 in 2020 with 3,768 votes to President Trump's 2,883, a margin of 885, or 8 times what it was in 2016, when Trump earned 1,904 votes to Hillary Clinton's 2012. The city of Milwaukee reported a record turnout of 84% Tuesday. Biden defeated Trump in Milwaukee 195,000 to 48,000, a margin of 145,000. He won 80% of the city's total vote. Of the city's 327 voting wards, 90 reported turnout of greater than 90%. That doesn't happen. I mean, that's correct. It doesn't happen. In 2016, city voter turnout was 75%. 9 out of every 10 registered voters voted. But that's not even what the first claim was. The first claim is that more people voted than were registered. So if that's the case, it's more than 90%. It's 110%. All right. Wisconsin is one of 21 states that allow same-day voter registration at the polls. What was the state in which Republicans were told not to come to the voting? Are you familiar with that? And I'll find that for people. This is very disconcerting stuff. Why was Arizona called so early? That's another riddle. That's a challenge to Fox News. I think Fox News is hurting itself. I think they take its listenership for granted. And, they're not going to mess around with Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity, and perhaps not with Laura Ingraham, and maybe not the 5, but though that's 4 hours out of 24 hours. It's not a good idea to take your audience for granted. One of the, may I offer a sidebar about life? That's my tendency. When you're a kid, it's almost built into kids to think that adults know what they're doing. Isn't that right? If you don't believe that, the foundations of your universe are weakened. You have to believe it. Adults are unbelievably important to children. Unbelievably. In the age of non-wisdom in which we live, it is often denied. And kids spend very little time with adults often. I mean, they have adult teachers, obviously, but that's not spending time with an adult in most cases. They don't have adult conversation. I have a theory that kids who I think people should have more than one child for a whole host of reasons, including the child's sake. But I believe from a lifetime of meeting only children, that not mean children only, but only children who have no siblings, they were forced to engage in adult conversation. And it shows. Kids should hear what adults have to say to one another about adult talk. It's the spectacular advantage of those of us who had a weekly Shabbat meal, Sabbath meal, Friday night, and or Saturday afternoon, in my case both, where I was the only child. So I was forced into adult talk every single week. It was a spectacularly beneficial thing to me. Anyway, my original point is kids think adults know what they're doing. And they often don't, as all of you adults listening know. And that's, you would think some elementary things would be guarded. Here's a question I would like to ask people. Do you think that if you had 5 leftists, and the Democratic Party is now leftist, if you had 5 leftists and 5 conservatives in charge, alone in charge of counting votes, each had an opportunity to cheat on behalf of their party, do you think it's a coin toss? There is no doubt in my mind, leftists are far more likely to cheat than conservatives. There is no doubt in my mind. Not liberals. I think a lot of liberals are honorable. But leftists, every means can be used to win. That's their view. Because they know that they are more morally pure than their opponents. So of course you could cheat on behalf of morality. That's how they think. They're not thinking, oh, this is going to give me power. That ultimately is the case, but that's not what they're thinking. I'm cheating on behalf of the cause of removing Donald Trump or not letting a black conservative be a senator in Michigan. That is a greater good than being honest about counting votes. Hi, this is Dennis Prager, and you know we are in a fight for our fundamental freedoms. That's why I am grateful for my friends at Alliance Defending Freedom. They are on the front lines fighting pivotal lawsuits for Americans whose freedoms are threatened, and they do it for free. That's why we're asking you to be as generous as you can by giving today so that Alliance Defending Freedom can continue to fight these lawsuits and be ready when your rights are threatened too. Give your gift now by visiting adflegal.org/Prager, and thank you for joining the fight for freedom.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I live with a bunch of liberal Democrats, and they were complaining about President Trump was dismantling President Obama's legacy.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like the fact that he had got rid of all of his regulations, his policies.
Right.
So if President Obama handed out all this to President Trump, how could he claim that President Trump inherited something that he really didn't have anything to do with?
Well, of course, Randy. Plus, how can he claim that that takes the credit for the economy when everything Donald Trump has done to improve the economy is criticized? Donald Trump lowered taxes. He lowered them too much. Rich people got too much of a break. Donald Trump lowered regulations. We need those regulations for Wall Street. So here you are taking credit for Donald Trump's economy while criticizing the policies that produce the economy. And Randy, the reason I said you were well named is because that's my dad's name, Randy. His name is Randolph. They called him Randy. Now, one more thing, Randy. You listen to the Larry Elder Show. I always try to use liberal sources to advance my own agenda, because you can't attack your own liberal sources. Here is Tavis Smiley, anti-Trump Tavis Smiley, who criticized President Trump, admitting that under Obama, by virtually every major metric, blacks lost ground.
Over these last 10 years, most of that on his watch, black America has lost ground in the major economic indicator categories.
The so-called wealth gap between the average black household and white household widened. Poverty went up. And from a period of 2010 to 2013, believe it or not, black net worth fell almost 30%. Some legacy.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The dirty tricks they're using in South Carolina, and what this has to say about Jamie Harrison, the Democrat candidate for Senate who's challenging Lindsey Graham. This race has kind of turned into a national referendum, in a way, of Democrat dirty tricks versus the Republican Party. It's a little bit like the Ted Cruz Beto O'Rourke battle was in 2018. Over at Red State, they write, not a day goes by where there isn't a fawning puff piece on how Harrison has managed to make a race competitive. You want to know how they're trying to win in South Carolina and beat Lindsey Graham? They're not trying to advance the message of this liberal Democrat, Jamie Harrison. They're pretending that a guy named Bill Bledsoe, who dropped out a month ago, he was earlier in the year challenging Lindsey. He dropped out and voted for Lindsey Graham. He's a complete Lindsey Graham supporters. But get this.
Okay, yes, indeed. Pleasure to be with you. I've been talking about this issue of fraud, and the question that I posed is a very important one. 5 leftists, 5 conservatives, Democratic Party operatives, Republican Party operatives. No, they don't have anybody else. In other words, they're counting ballots alone. 5 Republican, 5 Democratic. Who do you think is more likely to cheat? That's my question. There are so many numbers that are suspect. And I'll be honest with you, there is an embarrassment to begin with that so many states take so long to count ballots. This is, I think elections are decided, in I don't know, how long do they take in France? I'd be curious. Or in Germany. I would be curious. I mean, if they take a week there, then maybe that's the norm. Why do some states have virtually every vote tallied and some states don't? It's amazing the amount of money states spend. Wouldn't you think that elections would be sort of a priority on what you spend state money on? Scott in St. Petersburg, Florida. Dennis Prager, hello.
Hey, Dennis. Can I start by saying thank you for your just common sense, moral views that come from your spirit, man. I'll tell you.
Thank you.
I just got to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
My question regarding voter fraud, should Fox Network be brought up on criminal charges for
I don't think
come on, to release, Arizona and hold up Florida.
Right, yeah. I assume you're speaking, metaphorically, because obviously,
of course.
I said I think Fox is going to start losing some of its listenership, except for a select few programs. That is an odd example. You're right. I have no answer to that. I think they called Arizona before any network, before the left-wing networks. I don't want them to report right-wing news, but I don't want them to go overboard in looking like they are on the left. So I think there is room in America for one, at least one, but there's more than one now, right? Is OAN, is that correct? What is the One America Network? They do good work. Does Epic Times have a 24/7? No, are they on OAN? No, but they have their own podcast. Okay, because I know I was interviewed on it. There's a lot of great stuff out there, and it obviously has had an effect. I want you to understand that I do believe there was fraud. I hope I'm wrong, by the way, even if it means a Biden victory. I'd rather have a Biden victory, as I said, with honesty, than obviously more than a Biden victory with dishonesty, but even a Trump victory with dishonesty. I mean, this is a very big deal. And even then, I mean, the numbers of votes are so small. It is astonishing. I wish I could ask God, given how astonishing the success of the numbers who voted for Donald Trump. It is astonishing in the light of COVID, in the light of 4 years of smears and attacks from the media. So I'd like to ask God, if there weren't COVID, what would the results have been? Relief Factor is so successful because it is so efficacious, which is a fancy word for effective. It works. I marvel at it. I work out 3 times a week. My trainer studied under the Marquis de Sade, and I had a very painful, had a pain thigh. Not injury, just I exercised it. I took a Relief Factor, and the day it was gone. I marvel at it. I only advertise it because my wife told me one day, gets rid of her knee pain. Try it for 3 weeks. Doesn't work in 3 weeks, it doesn't work. $19.95, relieffactor.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Biden went around bragging that he stopped the prosecution. So if you can look into it, it sounds horrible to me. President Trump is referring to the widely shared clip of Joe Biden threatening to fire a prosecutor because they were looking into his son's business dealings. Play cut 25.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
And throughout the entire impeachment investigation process, Americans found that Hunter Biden was working for the Burisma, Ukrainian energy company Burisma, for $83,000 a month. Now, Americans know that he had no experience in that sector at all whatsoever. So that was where we stopped the story. But Senator Ron Johnson and Chuck Grassley last month released a Senate report investigating the money flows from foreign governments to Hunter Biden. So here's where Hunter Biden makes his money, and with it, Joe Biden. A $3.5 million wire from the mayor of Moscow's wife, a $100,000 spending account with a Chinese businessman, $1.4 million from his time on the board of Burisma, and $4.7 million in consulting fees from a Chinese Communist Party-linked company, and a $5 million forgivable unsecured loan not reported to the IRS from the Chinese Communist Party. And this was largely ignored from the activist media. But then Hunter Biden gave us a gift. He gave us his laptop. He said, please, take it. I don't want my dad to be president. Please.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Remember, the amount of time we took from nomination to confirmation was well within the norm. If you look back over American history, as you know, the typical time from nomination to confirmation. I'm glad that we were able to do it. I'm glad we were able to do it before the election so the American people could weigh the consequences of handing the Senate over to the hard left, which is what the Democratic Party is these days.
You had to act fast after Justice Scalia died unexpectedly, and you had to act fast after Justice Ginsburg died unexpectedly. Did you have any doubt at either of those points that you were doing the right thing?
Not at all. I mean, let's go back to 2016, which the Democrats conveniently leave out what I said, which was that when
A reminder, my dear listeners, from the beginning of the lockdown, these guys have been with me. Sierra Pacific Mortgage, they're Andrew and Todd, andrewandtodd.com. At the rates that they have now, that is mortgage rates, interest rates, if you're considering a refi, that's refinancing the house, a new purchase, a cash out refi, or even a reverse mortgage, these gentlemen are hard workers. I love that about them. They've been with me from the beginning of the lockdown. I have a word to say about the lockdown, but first I want you to at least give them a call, find out what's available. Or just go to their website, andrewandtodd.com. The phone number is very easy, 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172. andrewandtodd.com. They will take it from there. So I keep reading in the media, more cases than ever, record number of cases in America, and some hospitals are overflowing. You didn't see that? Oh, yeah, I know. Oh, they say in various, they even use Houston again. Yeah. So I don't believe the press. If the press says it's raining outside, I open up the shades. That is how I have no trust at all that anything that is reported in the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, CNN, AP is true if it has any political impact. The purpose of their reporting is to further left-wing causes. It is not to tell you the truth. Remember when they said Houston hospitals were overflowing? It's national news. So I had one of the most prominent doctors in Houston on the show 3 times. ER physician, major hospital in Houston. We're doing fine. Anyway, here is a thought for you, because apparently 3/4 of the country, according to a poll I saw, although I don't know why even I cite polls. To be honest, the profession. I don't know which has been more farcical, epidemiology or pollsters, or polling. I don't know which has disgraced itself more in my lifetime. In any event, it's a serious competition. So a lot of Americans are for a lockdown, right? And so are they in Europe. Now, interestingly, had we not had a lockdown, so many more Americans would have been immune by today. We had a lockdown when we shouldn't. Why is California still locked down with regard to restaurants, for example? So as to put one of the most important social institutions of the society out of business. Why can you eat on an airplane but not in a restaurant? Tell me that. There is no rational answer, except that people vote for Democrats. That's the reason. Had we not had a lockdown during the months when the virus was not rampaging, as it were, then we would have built up a serious herd immunity. So now that we didn't lock down, now there is more virus, and now people are calling for more lockdown. Where was I just reading? This is the most primitive response. It's so primitive. But even the primitives didn't do it, so I don't even know if it's primitive. This is brand new in human history. You lock down a society because there's a virus. You lock down those who are more likely to die in a car crash than from the virus. Why are they locked down? Why are schools shut? Every week I check on Sweden. Sweden is the one lab test. They never locked down. They had school the entire time. Not one student died, by the way. Just for the record. The cavalier attitude of teachers, I mean, the teaching profession, well, they're worse than the epidemiologists and pollsters. The teaching profession has disgraced itself, certainly in large urban areas. These female teachers walking around with these placards, I didn't sign up to die. My God. And they're teaching your kids? You got to pull your kids out of school. All these educational associations are telling teachers that the purpose of education now is to teach anti-racism. That's it. That's the purpose. I just was reading a script of someone who will present for PragerU a video. It's shocking. They're fully open about it. The purpose of education now is to teach how racist America is. You are now guilty of corrupting your child, and you will pay the price with an alienated child eventually. Alienated from you and from America, and from clear thinking, from decency. If you send your child to most schools, I'm sorry, it breaks my heart. It's not easy to take a child out of a school. But there's the old saying, which doesn't sound profound, but it is influential in my life. I'll tell it to you in the original Hebrew, Mashe batuach, batuach. What is certain is certain. It's a great saying. And then there's a corollary to that. I won't say it in English. Between maybe and certain, you definitely go with certain. Maybe homeschooling won't work, but it is certain that school won't work. That's the certitude of our time. It's a dark age the left has ushered in a great country.
This is Hugh Hewitt for townhall.com. President Trump has been making his biggest bet that the portion of the American electorate living between the coasts knows what is in its own best interest. He thinks these Americans know that their interest, economic, cultural, familial, diverge sharply from the coastal elites. Trump has taken up the case for folks between the coasts and states at the margin. He's counting especially on voters in Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And turnout is going to be enormous. That turnout issue means that for the first time since I started watching politics closely, a blowout in either direction is genuinely possible. I hope you've made your plans to vote and make sure to remind those in your world to get out and vote. America is at a crossroads with two starkly different visions for the future of the nation we love. Whatever the result, don't regret not doing your part. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
The Pepperdine School of Public Policy, America's unique graduate program for leaders. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Mayor Giuliani, when they say they are investigating one man and his business associates, what does that mean? Who is in the net? And could it be the Democrat candidate for the highest office in the land, Joe Biden?
It has to be, because the money laundering was being done for his benefit. And if you listen to his son's description of it on the hard drive, which no one has disputed, he makes it clear that Pop gets half of that. Pop, according to a text message of January 3rd, 2019, for 30 years, he's been taking care of all the expenses of the family. That's Hunter. And Pop requires him to kick half of the money to him. So every one of these deals is for the benefit of Joe Biden. And best evidence of that is, how did Joe, on the salary of a senator, acquire 5 houses and live like a multimillionaire while he was in the Senate? He didn't become rich after. He became rich while he was in the Senate. Well, he became rich because he was using his son, his brother, his sister-in-law, and his other brother as bagmen.
In that case, the question is very easy. You have dealt with organized crime. You have dealt with terrorism. You have put people behind bars because they are a threat to the national security and safety of all Americans.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Let me ask you about the Senate. Recently, you said you were feeling that it was a 50-50 call whether you would retain the majority. I think it is dangerous to lose the majority. I am.
All right, everybody. Dennis Prager here. Next hour, I will offer yet another argument for why it is hard to believe, if you are an honest citizen, that the vote has been counted honestly. Yes. All right. Let's go to Linda in Villages, Florida. Hi, Linda.
Hi, Dennis. I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener, a fan, a Republican, and I'm a recently retired professor of mathematics education. So, yes, you do get some conservatives in academia, but a lot of them, like me, keep it a secret. I would like to clarify first. You asked what I thought was a question earlier, and let's see if I understood your question, because that's one of the things about being a teacher. Got to make sure you understand the question, right? Was your question, how could it be that Trump improved in all major categories except one, but yet he still lost?
Right.
Okay, great. So I would like to, with your permission, give you like a scaled-down example that maybe illustrates and gets at the concept, being from mathematics education and all. So suppose you live in a very small town. Your opponent in 2016 got 100 votes in the election, and you only got 80. Then you improve in pretty much all categories. And the 2020 election comes, more people vote, and now your opponent, instead of 100, gets 105. You, instead of 90, got 98. So you probably noticed your opponent went up by 5. You went up by 8. Unfortunately, your opponent with 105 defeats you with 98.
Right. I understand. That is correct mathematically, but not in terms of percentages. Because I took away my opponent's votes. Specifically, when I get 15% of the black vote, as opposed to, I don't know, last time 8%, that's 7% he lost.
So that's how I'm trying to account for it. That's one of the reasons your opponent only went up by 5, even though they'd had 100. So your opponent was only up by 5%. You were at 90, and you went up to 98. That's more than a 10% improvement. So you improved percentage-wise more than your opponent, but yet you still lost.
All right. I hear you, but given that I took away his votes, even if he gets more, I should win the state that I won last time. He went up, correct, but I went up taking away his votes in that state. If it's a state where I lost last time, I think my professor's argument may hold.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
But what came out with Joe Biden recently, and it's going to keep coming out, I've never seen anything like it. And the fact that the media is not covering it, it is completely mind-bending to me that I think some people are scared to death of what's going to come out, and they will do anything, including sell their souls practically, to cover up.
This is what's so incredible about our media. I mean, when you look at communist China, for example, and the propaganda that they push, and the fact that, you know, the signal went down during the presidential debate when President Trump was talking about China, right? I mean, you know, you look at how they are on purpose manipulating the media to only allow access from their citizens to whatever they want their citizens to know. I mean, that's indoctrination. It's propaganda, and it's absolutely unacceptable in a society that values truth and fact. And so what our media is telling us, and what the leftists are saying, is that they are more concerned about having a narrative for you to believe than they are about actually telling fact and truth. Because remember, we are in a post-truth society. We are in a society that believes in my truth versus your truth, and that truth is just perspective. And so their perspective is that Joe Biden is the best candidate because he will allow their purposes to go through in government. He will manipulate the U.S. government system to their advantage. And so they don't care about reporting fact and truth. They're not journalists anymore. They're activists.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Hi, this is Dennis Prager, and you know we are in a fight for our fundamental freedoms. That's why I am grateful for my friends at Alliance Defending Freedom. They are on the front lines fighting pivotal lawsuits for Americans whose freedoms are threatened, and they do it for free. That's why we're asking you to be as generous as you can by giving today so that Alliance Defending Freedom can continue to fight these lawsuits and be ready when your rights are threatened too. Give your gift now by visiting adflegal.org/Prager, and thank you for joining the fight for freedom.
This is Owen Strand for townhall.com. In the film No Country for Old Men, a sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones recounts a dream. He saw his father riding a horse going on ahead to make a fire somewhere out in all that dark and all that cold, and I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. The Coen brothers film wasn't political, but these words resonate today. Hopelessness abounds, lockdowns continue, marriages suffer, children languish, and politics divide. Many years ago, a wise man said to his followers that they should love their neighbor. Christ's words promise to galvanize us in the wake of a bitter election. We must love our neighbor in divided days. We should not fall prey to hate or insufferability. We should go on ahead and make a fire somewhere in the dark and work to prepare a better country for our children and for citizens yet to be born. I'm Owen Strand.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The Biden campaign manager declared there is absolutely no scenario where President Trump will be declared the victor tonight. Listen to this audacious arrogance on Team Biden's side.
Just declaring victory without actually having won in the kind of states that we're talking about here is really basically trying to say that COVID is over, even though we know it's not. And all the evidence is saying that COVID in this country continues. And so we want to be clear with all of you. We want to make sure that we're having this dialogue and share with you what we're seeing, and that we also want to be fundamentally clear what we believe to be true. Under no scenario will Donald Trump be declared a victor on election night. And we think that that's really fundamental to how we want to approach tomorrow.
Oh, really? You say that yesterday. You know that, huh? Incidentally, the president shot this garbage down with a brief answer on Fox and Friends this morning.
At what point will you declare victory?
When there's victory. If there's victory, I think we'll have victory. I think the polls are, suppression polls, and I think we'll have victory, but only when there's victory. I mean, there's no reason to play games. And I think we'll have victory. I think I look at it as being a very, a very solid chance at winning. I don't know what the chances are. I don't know how they rate the chances, but I think we have a very solid chance of winning. And I think a lot of that has to do with the tremendous crowd size. But I mean, a small event. There was no small event. Every place, no matter where we went.
I consider that a good sign that the Democrats are proclaiming that there's no scenario where Trump can be declared the victor tonight.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
A lot of my friends are down today, and I've told them, don't be. Look what they had to do, assuming Joe Biden wins this election, and we still don't know that. There's some legal challenges left. In fact, the Trump campaign is now asking for a recount in Wisconsin. But assuming Biden wins this election, look what they, meaning the left, the Democrats, the media, academia, Hollywood, all big tech had to do to defeat this guy. They literally had to circle the wagons. They literally had to suppress the Hunter Biden story. They literally had to run with this bogus Trump-Russia collusion story for almost 3 years. They literally had to illegally acquire his income taxes, publish it in the New York Times during this very important stretch. By the way, whatever happened to the allegations that he had done something wrong, that he did something illegal? It wasn't about that. It was about embarrassing him because the left has trained people that rich people don't pay enough in taxes, even as the very same people complaining do everything they can to minimize their tax burden. But when rich people do it, somehow that's fraud, that's mean-spirited, that's selfish. This is what he has put up against. And all my life, I've heard this adage: never pick a fight with a newspaper that can buy ink by a barrel. This man picked a fight with an industry that can buy ink.
Prager, welcome to the show. ask my guest to hold on just a moment. He is an expert. He's done two PragerU videos on voter fraud. I can't tell you how sad I am to say to you that I believe, I don't know, I acknowledge, I believe that there has been voter fraud. There's too much evidence. The circumstances are too fishy. The Republicans, here's another example. The Republicans gained between 7 and 10 seats in the House. They retained, apparently, the Senate, their majority in the Senate. It's not yet confirmed, but it seems that way. So they're usually people will vote as they do for the presidential nominee, so that an unpopular president brings down a House and Senate candidates, but they went up. And then all of these votes, in every instance, the Republican is leading, and then you wake up, or 2 days later, gee, we found more votes. This has happened. It's what got Al Franken elected in Minnesota. And we're supposed to trust that that's true? Not to mention the mail-in fiasco, which my guest knows a great deal about. So let me welcome Eric Eggers, senior investigator at the Government Accountability Institute. Voter fraud is real, and how to steal an election, mail-in ballots. How appropriate. Watch them on PragerU. Eric Eggers, welcome to the Dennis Prager Show.
Thank you, Dennis. I'd like to say it's great to be back, but I think the circumstances under which we're having this conversation are anything but terrific.
Well said. Truly well said. Okay, let's analyze this with the greatest clarity possible. Your bottom line is that you believe what with regard to the results for president?
I believe that, unfortunately, as the two PragerU videos that we did sort of foreshadowed, that the massive increase in mail-in balloting, which, as you know, and your listeners who've been paying attention to this topic know, has been cited by even the New York Times as the form of voting which is by far the most susceptible to fraud. The massive increase of that form of voting in states that had proven during primaries that they were ill-prepared to handle the massive increase in ballots and who have a documented history of election integrity issues, Pennsylvania chief among them, leads to very hard questions about the accuracy and sincerity of the election results, right? Because remember, one illegal vote undermines every legal vote that was cast. I think we all want every legal vote to count and only legal votes to count. But in states like Pennsylvania, their track record is the opposite of that. Remember, Dennis, that Pennsylvania's Secretary of State actually was fired 4 years ago over presiding over their computer system that had a quote-unquote glitch that permitted illegal immigrants to vote. That's one of the problems that we've seen in Pennsylvania. Philadelphia is notorious for problems. They had an elections judge literally charged and arrested with stuffing the ballot box this spring. I mean, these are just some of the things that you alluded to when you say the evidence is clear. So, I'd like to say that it's shocking, but it's unfortunately exactly as you were concerned could happen.
So what exactly, this is even unclear to me, what exactly, and you may not be able to answer this exactly fully, happens when we say voter fraud? What is happening?
Right, and it's important that you clarify the terms because organizations like the Brennan Center and election lawyers will say that voter fraud is only an act of impersonation by an illegal voter on behalf of a legal voter. And that's a very narrow and some would say intentionally under-inclusive definition. So sometimes I use the phrase election fraud because to me election fraud is anything that undermines the weight of a true and honest vote. And so that can include illegal immigrants being registered to vote and casting ballots. That can include ballots being filled out on behalf of people that are on voter registration rolls that are inaccurate and they get cast anyway. And by the way, as you know, the Supreme Court has cited statistics that say 24 million voter registrations in this country are wrong. But when you mail everyone a ballot or an absentee ballot request form, as Michigan has done, then those are ballots that are eligible to be filled out and sent in, right? When states permit ballot harvesting. So I think that undermines the accuracy of the true election integrity. So it could be any number of things, right? Senior citizens, political operatives come to senior citizens' homes and help them fill out ballots and then deliver those ballots. And in Florida, that practice is so widespread, we call it granny farming. So there's a lots of different ways to do it. In New Jersey, they were stealing ballots out of mailboxes and creating voter signature databases. So there's lots of ways to meddle with the accuracy of elections. And,
right, but when you are talking about, I mean, what are we talking about, for example? Take any state that you've followed, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, or Georgia perhaps. Tell me what can be done. What you mentioned doesn't strike me as 10,000 votes that have been manipulated. So how do you manipulate thousands?
Well, let's take Pennsylvania, right? And I think, so what we're describing is systemic vulnerabilities that I think lead people to say, hey, we know the system's vulnerable, we know it can be exploited, and that's why we want to have poll watchers, that's why we want to have people, like as many eyes on the process in as many stages as possible along the way. So the thing that's very concerning to me, and you're seeing this now get reported in Pennsylvania, is the state Supreme Court in September said two things that I think are sort of highly controversial at the moment. One of them is that it's okay to accept ballots past the deadline. Like they can accept absentee or mail-in ballots until Friday, and they're supposed to be postmarked by Election Day. But, and this is the key, absent a clear postmark, they can accept the ballot if it doesn't have evidence that it was cast after Election Day. So conceptually, and this is one of the things that they're arguing about, right, ballots that just show up with no postmark could be counted. And that's one of the things that they'll be litigating. This is actually, they litigated the same thing in Virginia. So, so that would be, to me, an example of massive increases of ballots coming in and potentially being counted that were cast after.
That's what I don't fully grasp. It's hard for me to believe, but that just may be my problem, but it is hard for me to believe that thousands of ballots with smudgy postmarks have arrived.
So that's a great question. I don't know, but I think one of the things that's concerning is the idea that, based on reports that we've seen from social media and otherwise, it doesn't seem like there's been a readiness or a willingness to accept monitoring and eyes to make sure that all the protocols are being followed. The other thing that's concerning is that states were told, and this is part of the argument that Pennsylvania used, hey, okay, so we currently are going to say we'll accept ballots that arrive up until Friday, but we might revisit that. So counties, please help keep these ballots separate. But then some counties, and you've seen two members of the Pennsylvania legislature currently asking for the Secretary of State to resign for this reason, say they then have reversed that guidance and said go ahead and commingle the ballots. And this is a challenge, because if the ballots get commingled, now it's impossible to separate the ones that were cast in accordance to the law and the ones that were not. So, so these are just among the things that speak to, hey, have all the laws and protocols that were in place on the day of the election, or like when we start the election, have they all been followed? And the last thing I'll just say, Dennis, you're saying tens of thousands of votes. I'm old enough to remember a presidential election this century that was decided by 537 votes. Right? The margins of victories in Arizona and Nevada and Georgia are pursuing to be much closer to the 4 figures, even 3 figures potentially. So I don't know, and this is one of the things that I say is you're correct potentially. The thing that does make American elections as secure as they can be is because of the decentralized nature of it, right? So it's impossible to. The idea of nationwide voter fraud that's happening in these massive waves in every state, that seems less likely. But can you get an organized effort to get hundreds, if not a few thousand, done if you do it throughout a state in an organized way? I think research previously has indicated that is possible.
All right, a couple of more questions. Eric Eggers, you should watch him. He has 2 videos, unfortunately, seeming to prognosticate what might have happened or did happen. I said to you, my dear listeners, from the beginning, that the mailing to tens of millions of people of ballots they didn't request can only lead to chaos. This is a first in American history, and it should be the last.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
It's pretty remarkable and really promising. And I know that's not really the tone of the movement right now, but they spent $380 million to lose in Iowa, Kentucky, Montana, probably North Carolina, and Maine. So without the Senate, I still think the president's going to win. What we know is that the Senate will remain in Republican hands. It will.
Let's talk about why that matters for a second. Because whether it's packing the Supreme Court,
not going to happen.
Whether it's lowering the voting age,
whether it's
making Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. new states.
Not going to happen.
That is a sucking chest wound. That is an injury to the Democrats, the likes of which, look, we are safe on those issues now.
Not to mention the entire cabinet, if we lose the presidency, now has to go through advise and consent through the U.S. Senate.
Of the Senate.
And so instead of Elizabeth Warren becoming Treasury Secretary, they'll just get another Goldman Sachs banker. Like, okay, fine,
right,
whatever.
Or Bernie Sanders become the Secretary of Labor.
Precisely.
Right.
That dog is not going to hunt in the Mitch McConnell Senate. And so we should have lost.
We were told that we were going to lose.
Let's just be honest. We were outspent 5-1.
Yes.
We had our stuff censored on social media.
The president was censored.
Everyone was censored. Yeah. We went through a shutdown, a lockdown, a virus that we were getting blamed for politically.
Yes.
They had Black Lives Matter plastered on the NBA finals, every person watching that. BLM Incorporated riots. We were supposed to lose.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is now close is an interruption of the plans for Joe Biden and the Democrat ruling class.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Hey, Sam, welcome to The Mike Gallagher Show.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I'm actually a Biden supporter. Not sure how many Biden supporters have called you this morning, but actually,
you're the first one.
Well, great. I actually am in Georgia. It is contested. I think we may have a Democratic pickup here on the House side. In one of the congressional districts I live in here, we may have Carolyn Bordeaux.
What happened to your blue wave, Sam?
I don't, that's the thing. I am stunned, as what you've been saying this morning on the radio show. I am very, very stunned. What gets me is the African American and the Hispanic vote. And you were talking about the economic issues. I don't really see this president really doing so much for the working class. I mean, the tax bill that they have passed has really benefited.
How can you say that?
No,
Sam,
hear me out.
All right, but let me make a point, and then you've got the floor. I promise. I'm going to give you all the time you need.
Sure.
How can you say that a president whose tenure resulted in the lowest unemployment rate for African Americans and Hispanics in our nation's history isn't doing positive things for working class people of color?
No, I think unemployment has gone down for everybody, at least in the first 2 years of the Trump presidency, and it did it towards the 2 years of the Obama presidency. Let's just be honest about that too, right?
I'm not trying to win a debate. You just made an assertion that he isn't, that working class African Americans and Hispanics aren't benefiting. Clearly they are, and clearly Hispanic and African Americans. And I don't know, are you African American or Hispanic?
No, I'm not either.
But nor am I. Obviously, people who are actually Hispanic and African American voted Republican last night.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Assume for
why having these conversations, I think, are important, but it's also important to do it responsibly, as I think we've done today.
And finally, are there not counted votes?
Not counted votes, as in votes that are cast. So there's provisional ballots, right? So provisional ballots can be cast if there's some question about legitimacy or accuracy of that ballot on the day that the vote is cast. So if somebody said, hey, I sent an absentee ballot, but I'm not sure you've got it, and they say, okay, we'll let you cast a provisional ballot. We have to go back and verify, did we get it, has it counted, things like that. So there are the provisional ballots. I mean, there are ballots that won't be counted because the signatures don't match or they're received after the deadline, things like that. But yeah, so I think that's kind of where we're getting to some of these states like Nevada.
Forgive me. Are you aware that of the reports out of Philadelphia that Republicans are not allowed in to counting centers?
I am aware of those reports, and I've seen some instances where I think there may have just been a recent ruling that said no, they are allowed in there now. But I think that's another example of something that just sort of raises eyebrows, right? Like, why would we not be wanting, to me, right, both sets of political eyes on the process to make sure that it's as fair as possible?
That's exactly right. Yes. All right.
If there's any good news, Dennis, it's that my wife might finally believe that sometimes I might be right about things.
You know, I can't tell you the joy that brings me. All right, you're a good man. Thank you. What men will do to have their wives say you're right. They will write books. They will climb Everest. Dear man, Bruce Hershenson, one of the wonderful Americans of my generation, of this past generation, had a line once. He said to me, in the beginning, the Lord created man and critic. Thought that was a very witty line.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
I don't get the pick because, number one, she barely polled 1% in the primary, had to get out early because her campaign completely just collapsed. And to my surprise, because going into the primary, before it really got started, I thought, you know, she's got some charisma. Maybe she's a real contender. And then Tulsi Gabbard eviscerated her in like the second or third debate, and she was done. But I do remember, and this was another reason I didn't think Joe would pick her, she basically called Joe Biden in one of the debates a racist and a sexual predator. And I guess he wasn't paying attention because he picked her anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just bizarre. And then she came out with this cartoon over the weekend in which she really avowed socialism in a way I've never seen an American political candidate do, by saying that it's not just equality, it's equity. And she went on to describe that it is not equal opportunity, it is equal outcomes.
Yeah.
That was stunning. Eric, I've never heard.
You might as well put a gun to my head, say, give me your money. I mean, that's effectively what that is. That's the nice cartoon way of putting
stunning.
it.
Yeah, I've never heard an American politician, not even Bernie Sanders, explicitly said, let's have exactly the same outcomes. Because, I mean, if that's true, then Bernie and Kamala Harris have to give up a lot of their wealth, and both of them are multimillionaires, which means that if that's the case, then let them sign away a significant portion of their wealth and put it in the pot, and we'll stir it up and divvy it out, just like good old socialists do.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
And you see these pollsters don't understand the country. Underestimated how close the race was. Second consecutive big race they've done this. Still don't understand the country. Still are clueless. Still believe that people are deplorables. And that this man, 74 years old, just recovered from COVID-19, goes to all 14 battleground states in 3 days? Incredible. And they've ignored his economy. They've ignored his peace initiatives. And generally speaking, peace and prosperity get you reelected. Until the coronavirus came down, economy's rocking and rolling. Pulls out of the Iran Accord, what happened to all the conflagration that they were predicting? Didn't happen. And now those states remaining in the treaty in the deal realize that Iran is cheating, as we knew all along. Pull out the climate accord, what happened? Our greenhouse gas emissions are going down at a rate faster than those of our European counterparts who are still in the climate accord agreement. Why? In large part fracking that Biden opposes. Natural gas emits about half the greenhouse gases that oil and coal do. And improve technology by reducing regulations. That's why we're energy independent, and Joe Biden bragged about that the other day, honestly.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
It's pretty remarkable and really promising. And I know that's not really the tone of the movement right now, but they spent $380 million to lose in Iowa, Kentucky, Montana, probably North Carolina, and Maine.
All right, everybody. There's too much that doesn't add up. I think that a possible scenario of cheating is simply giving in a false number to the Secretary of State of your state. Somebody gives the number, right? Are those somebodies of both parties? Is the final number that is given to the state to announce and to certify, is that number overseen by Republicans as much as it is by Democrats in a Democrat state? That's a question that I would like answered. As I mentioned earlier, and I think is one of the many legitimate questions, is how does President Trump, in a state he won, let's keep it to a state he won last time, like Wisconsin, how does he get significantly more blacks, significantly more Hispanics, essentially the same percentage of men and women? In other words, he goes up in every category, except those where he stays the same, and loses. Because remember, that percentage that he got is taken away from his opponent. How does the House gain 7 to 10 seats for Republicans, and the president trails in those in various states? There are some interesting writers on the left, as I read them a lot, who are, even with a Biden certified victory, are very disconcerted with regard to the results. They expected a blue wave. That was their term. The pollsters told them there would be a blue wave. They were hoping not only to retain the House, but to increase their number. They were hoping to flip the Senate. And we're days now after the election, and we don't know the results yet. It's that close. How many Americans voted for Donald Trump? 67 million? What is the number? 68 million people. My dear friends, I want you to understand, while you can't despair, I would have despaired 4 years ago. I've said this, I've been consistent. That was a very, very important election. That might have been the most important, and I've been charged correctly. People say, well, you say that every time, but it's not true. It's not correct. I said it 2 times, this time and last time. But last time was the most important of the 2 most important. You're not alone if you find the left repulsive, if you think that the country is at stake and in a civil war with the left. 67 million people agree with you. It is an astonishing thing when you think that it's a 50-50 split in this country, left and right, and yet the left controls everything. How does that happen? How does half the country allow one half the country to run everything? Everything! Can you name anything other than the Senate? And until now, the presidency for the last 4 years that the right controls? How does the NBA, given half of the country has utter contempt for the Black Lives Matter movement, not for the concept of Black Lives Matter, which everybody shares? It's a non-issue. I mean contempt. It is an evil organization, okay? Half the country knows it, and about a half of the other half knows it. The BLM hate this country. They hate you if you're white. They think you're an idiot when you march with them. You are just a useful idiot, just like the people who march with communists who weren't communists. Useful idiots are so common in this world. God must love them. He made so many. How does half this country get ruled by the other half? It's an honorable question. How do you eat less? It's an honorable question, too. That's my theory on health. Eat less. But what if you get hungry? So did you know? I didn't know this. I learned this. The doctors who made Riduzone, it's got 2 patents, by the way, and it's the only OEA-accepted product by the FDA. OEA is the molecule in the human being that says you're full. I'm not sure dogs have that molecule. They're never full. But we do, and then you stop eating. That's what Riduzone has. 30% off with the promo code Dennis.
This is Owen Strachan for townhall.com. In the film No Country for Old Men, a sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones recounts a dream. He saw his father riding a horse going on ahead to make a fire somewhere out in all that dark and all that cold, and I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. The Coen brothers film wasn't political, but these words resonate today. Hopelessness abounds, lockdowns continue, marriages suffer, children languish, and politics divide. Many years ago, a wise man said to his followers that they should love their neighbor. Christ's words promise to galvanize us in the wake of a bitter election. We must love our neighbor in divided days. We should not fall prey to hate or insufferability. We should go on ahead and make a fire somewhere in the dark and work to prepare a better country for our children and for citizens yet to be born. I'm Owen Strachan.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden campaign manager declared there is absolutely no scenario where President Trump will be declared the victor tonight. Listen to this audacious arrogance on Team Biden's side.
Just declaring victory without actually having won in the kind of states that we're talking about here is really basically trying to say that COVID is over, even though we know it's not. And all the evidence is saying that COVID in this country continues. And so we want to be clear with all of you. We want to make sure that we're having this dialogue and share with you what we're seeing, and that we also want to be fundamentally clear what we believe to be true. Under no scenario will Donald Trump be declared a victor on election night. And we think that that's really fundamental to how we want to approach tomorrow.
Oh, really? You say that yesterday. You know that, huh? Incidentally, the president shot this garbage down with a brief answer on Fox and Friends this morning.
At what point will you declare victory?
When there's victory. If there's victory, I think we'll have victory. I think the polls are, suppression polls, and I think we'll have victory, but only when there's victory. I mean, there's no reason to play games. And I think we'll have victory. I think I look at it as being a very, a very solid chance at winning. I don't know what the chances are. I don't know how they rate the chances, but I think we have a very solid chance of winning. And I think a lot of that has to do with the tremendous crowd size. But, I mean, a small event, there was no small event.
All right, everybody. Dennis Prager here. How much money was put into Democrat campaigns? Hundreds of millions of dollars, correct? More than $1 billion, would you say? Oh, well over $1 billion. And what about the Republican? It wasn't as much money. I would love to know. The Republicans were vastly outspent. Where did Bloomberg place his money? Florida? $100 million in which race? Oh, wait. So what race are we talking about? The presidential. Oh, well, it's another wasted. The man spent a lot of money on nothing. I have to say, and it's sad to me, but he truly demonstrated that he's a fool. When he actually spoke, he said nothing. You remember at the debate? The Democratic debate? I mean, he should have just shut up. He was better thought of prior to this past season than now. Democrats did not find him impressive, and Republicans did not find him impressive. So, there you go. All he did is hurt his reputation, and that's pretty much what one has in life. What are you going to do? A lot of where did Steyer put his hundreds of millions of dollars? Also into things that didn't matter. This whole Green New Deal that if Joseph Biden becomes president, he will push like crazy, because the left will run the Democratic Party. It does run the Democratic Party. Just remember this. Any plan to get off carbon emissions, to get off fossil fuel, that does not rely on nuclear power is a fraud. It means all they want to do is undo the economy. Their interest is not the environment. If you care about carbon emissions and do not advocate nuclear power, you're a phony. I stand by it. I stake my reputation as a thinker on that statement. You are a phony, a fraud, who loathes capitalism, who loathes wealth production. You have no concern about the environment. You're a phony. If you believe the world is coming to an end in 12 years and don't advocate nuclear power, you're a phony. Get it? All you do is say that to scare people who are ignorant, which is the majority of people. There is almost nothing on Earth that is as safe as nuclear power. It's hard to find something safer. Is that right? A video on nuclear power on Sunday? On Monday? Who's giving it? Oh, Michael Schellenberger. He knows his stuff. Lifetime environmentalist. I should, so many things I should. I always say I should. I need another project like the proverbial hole in the head. When I leave you folks, I'm finishing Deuteronomy. You have to understand, there's a lot going on, and I'm actually headed to Hungary in a week to give a lecture, a couple of lectures in Hungary. If that actually happens, Europe is going on a lockdown, an act of colossal stupidity. Let us further destroy people's lives in the name of saving them. Leaders, including conservative leaders, Boris Johnson, Benjamin Netanyahu. This is not, I don't know Modi's first name, the Prime Minister of India. Another example. Leaders in the world today are afraid. They're afraid of the media. They're afraid of being accused of, he didn't do, she didn't, well, it's mostly he didn't do a lockdown. How many people did he kill? The morons of the media. If you're deep, it's not possible any longer. If you have depth, you don't go into journalism. How many will ask, if Joe Biden's elected, how many will ask him at a press conference, what about nuclear power? 0. A, because they won't challenge him. B, because they don't even know about it. Only sun and wind, which has been a farce in Germany. They've relied more on coal now in Germany as a result of the ineffectiveness of wind and sun. Germany, a perfect place to rely on solar power. I remember when I studied in England in my third year at the college, the sun came out one day and the professor actually disbanded the class. He said, the sun is out. I think you should enjoy it. Go outside. England is going to depend on solar power. Nuclear power is totally clean. If you think carbon is dirty, you should have a picture of a nuclear power plant in your bedroom. Dan in Invergrove Heights, Minnesota. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Dennis. How are you?
Okay.
Dennis, I for years I was doing work as an election judge, and I can tell you, at least in Minnesota, we would have packets of blank ballots in plastic wrap, 100 ballots.
Okay, this is exactly what I imagined, and I now you're telling me this does exist. Blank ballots. By the way, talk into your phone, not your speakerphone, if you can.
Sorry, I thought I took it off speaker.
Yeah, and there's no comparison.
Yeah.
So
Sorry about that.
All right,
yeah.
so you were a judge.
Oh yeah, 100% for years. So you have blank ballots, and it's simple to obviously, what more I have to say? I mean, obviously.
Where are these? All right, tell me, where are these blank ballots?
Well, you have them in reserve because you might need them if people come in and say, when they come in to vote, if they don't have a ballot, right, you have to give them a ballot.
Very, very interesting.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Burka.
It's pretty remarkable and really promising. And I know that's not really the tone of the movement right now, but they spent $380 million to lose in Iowa, Kentucky, Montana, probably North Carolina, and Maine. So without the Senate, I still think the president's going to win. What we know is that the Senate will remain in Republican hands. It will.
Let's talk about why that matters for a second. Because whether it's packing the Supreme Court,
not going to happen.
Whether it's lowering the voting age,
not
whether it's
happen.
making Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. new states.
Not going to happen.
That is a sucking chest wound. That is an injury to the Democrats, the likes of which, look, we are safe on those issues now.
Not to mention the entire cabinet, if we lose the presidency, now has to go through advise and consent through the U.S. Senate.
Of the Senate.
And so instead of Elizabeth Warren becoming Treasury Secretary, they'll just get another Goldman Sachs banker. Like, okay, fine,
right,
whatever.
Bernie Sanders become the Secretary of Labor.
Precisely.
Right.
That dog is not going to hunt in the Mitch McConnell Senate. And so we should have lost.
We were told that we were going to lose.
Let's just be honest. We were outspent 5-1.
Yes.
We had our stuff censored on social media.
The president was censored.
Everyone was censored. Yeah. We went through a shutdown, a lockdown, a virus that we were getting blamed for politically.
Yes.
They had Black Lives Matter plastered on the NBA finals, every person watching that. BLM Incorporated riots. We were supposed to lose.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is now close is an interruption of the plans for Joe Biden and the Democrat ruling class.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Hey, Sam, welcome to The Mike Gallagher Show.
Yeah, hi. Hi. I'm actually a Biden supporter. Not sure how many Biden supporters have called you this morning, but actually,
you're the first one.
Well, great. I actually am in Georgia. It is contested. I think we may have a Democratic pickup here on the House side. In one of the congressional districts I live in here, we may have Carolyn Bordeaux.
What happened to your blue wave, Sam?
I don't, that's the thing. I am stunned, as what you've been saying this morning on the radio show. I am very, very stunned. What gets me is the African American and the Hispanic vote. And you were talking about the economic issues. I don't really see this president really doing so much for the working class. I mean, the tax bill that they have passed has really benefited.
How can you say that?
No,
Sam,
hear me out.
All right, but let me make a point, and then you've got the floor. I promise. I'm going to give you all the time you need.
Sure.
How can you say that a president whose tenure resulted in the lowest unemployment rate for African Americans and Hispanics in our nation's history isn't doing positive things?
For the belief that the election results are not honest, and that bothers me because I would be at peace. Biden won fair and square. That's the way life goes. But if he didn't win fair and square, then I am not prepared to say that's the way life goes. The reports now are on Fox. Is that they're not allowing GOP lawyers in to vote counting. I just saw in Philadelphia. The Democrat lawyer for the city of Philadelphia, Michelle Hengley, tweeted back in September that Joe Biden and Democrats needed a landslide. I see the tweet from her, so that's accurate. Now, guess who decides whether or not Donald Trump's lawyers are granted access to observe vote counting? Michelle Hengley. If that's correct, what does that say to you? And I mean it. What does it say to you? That's a real issue. Angela, Los Angeles, hello. Angela.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. First-time caller.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, why didn't the president implement some kind of preventative measures to prevent it from happening?
The president has no control over what states do. That's the answer. That's the answer. And by the way, I support that. I believe in federalism. I want the states to make their own rules. That's why we have the United States of America. Talking about the states, the damage done by New Yorkers in Florida and the damage done by Californians in Arizona, and probably Colorado too. Colorado has become as blue a state as any. Amazing, though, no advances in the Senate for them and serious losses in the House for the Democrats. To own the media in time of a pandemic and lose?
Just for the record, we also
gained one governor. And we gained one governor, which we already had utter dominance. Isn't 2/3 of the governors?
No, it's 27-23.
Oh, really? Oh, 27.
It was 26-24.
It was 26-24, now it's 27-23? Yeah. Ye are blessed, who, in most cases, who have a Republican governor. I'm Dennis Prager, and we continue.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
What happened on Election Day was the longest lines they've ever seen.
Correct.
In Scottsdale, Fountain Hills, in in Chandler, in the Northwest Valley, really Republican areas, because people were holding onto their ballots.
Correct.
I have talked to 50 people, because we're headquartered in Arizona.
Yes.
They said their vote has still not been counted according to the registrar's office if they voted on the day of and they dropped their ballot off.
Wow.
50. So that's 50 for 50.
Yes.
So 500,000 remaining ballots. What's the deficit between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? It's 90,000 right now. So let me get this straight. They won't call Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
They won't call North Carolina. They didn't call Ohio or Florida. I knew we won Florida at 7:30 last night. 7:30. And here's why.
But they call Arizona.
No, they did not want to give one win to the president. They didn't want this kind of momentum swing. They were filibustering. They were interrupting. They were just kind of bringing down the expectations. And I don't say this lightly. The fix is in against the president. And I said this in our previous couple hours. The American people deserve so much credit. Like, you guys did awesome yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You really did.
Yeah.
You despite all the disinformation, the impeachment, the coup, the spying, the 5-to-1 spending, the censorship, it's unbelievable how well we did.
It is.
And we don't know how it's going to land. No, we were up against a juggernaut here.
Right. But I still have to say this. My wife got up at 4 a.m. and she was working as a polling officer till 8 p.m. yesterday. Mm-hmm. That's what she did. And she came home after that and she said, I just don't get it. And I'm not, the president will fight and fight and fight. But Charlie, what you do is the center of it all. Because the question is, how did tens of millions of Americans still vote Democrat? That's the issue.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
Hi, this is Dennis Prager, and we are in a fight for our fundamental freedoms. That's why I am grateful for my friends at Alliance Defending Freedom. They are on the front lines fighting pivotal lawsuits for Americans whose freedoms are threatened, and they do it for free. That's why we're asking you to be as generous as you can by giving today so that Alliance Defending Freedom can continue to fight these lawsuits and be ready when your rights are threatened too. Give your gift now by visiting adflegal.org/Prager, and thank you for joining the fight for freedom.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Whether it's packing the Supreme Court,
not going to happen.
Whether it's lowering the voting age,
not
whether it's
happen.
Making Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. new states.
Not going to happen.
That is a sucking chest wound. That is an injury to the Democrats, the likes of which, look, we are safe on those issues now.
Not to mention the entire cabinet, if we lose the presidency, now has to go through advise and consent through the U.S. Senate.
of the Senate.
And so instead of Elizabeth Warren becoming Treasury Secretary, they'll just get another Goldman Sachs banker. Like, okay, fine,
Right, or
whatever.
Bernie Sanders becoming the Secretary of Labor.
Precisely.
Right.
That dog is not going to hunt in the Mitch McConnell Senate. And so we should have lost.
We were told that we were going to lose.
Let's just be honest. We were outspent like 5-1.
Yes.
We had our stuff censored on social media.
The president was censored.
Everyone was censored. Yeah. We went through a shutdown, a lockdown, a virus that we were getting blamed for politically.
Yes.
They had Black Lives Matter plastered on the NBA finals, every person watching that. BLM Incorporated riots. We were supposed to lose.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is now close is an interruption of the plans for Joe Biden and the Democrat ruling class.
Look, it's incredibly important to inject that positive tone into what we're doing right now. I switched on Rush's show this morning, and he was all about, we can win this. Doesn't matter whether it's Arizona or Pennsylvania. We have the figures. I heard all the great calculations from the campaign manager today. I want your response. For me, from my perspective, you have a much better grasp of things at the grassroots level across the country because of that incredible thing called Turning Point USA you created. But for me, it's down to who has the better lawyers and who has more guts.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Owen Strain for townhall.com. In the film No Country for Old Men, a sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones recounts a dream. He saw his father riding a horse going on ahead to make a fire somewhere out in all that dark and all that cold, and I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. The Coen brothers film wasn't political, but these words resonate today. Hopelessness abounds, lockdowns continue, marriages suffer, children languish, and politics divide. Many years ago, a wise man said to his followers that they should love their neighbor. Christ's words promise to galvanize us in the wake of a bitter election. We must love our neighbor in divided days. We should not fall prey to hate or insufferability. We should go on ahead and make a fire somewhere in the dark and work to prepare a better country for our children and for citizens yet to be born. I'm Owen Strain.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The Biden campaign manager declared there is absolutely no scenario where President Trump will be declared the victor tonight. Listen to this audacious arrogance on Team Biden's side.
Just declaring victory without actually having won in the kind of states that we're talking about here is really basically trying to say that COVID is over, even though we know it's not. And all the evidence is saying that COVID in this country continues. And so we want to be clear with all of you. We want to make sure that we're having this dialogue and share with you what we're seeing, and that we also want to be fundamentally clear what we believe to be true. Under no scenario will Donald Trump be declared a victor on election night. And we think that that's really fundamental to how we want to approach tomorrow.
Oh, really? You say that yesterday. You know that, huh? Incidentally, the president shot this garbage down with a brief answer on Fox and Friends this morning.
At what point will you declare victory?
When there's victory. If there's victory, I think we'll have victory.
Is only those of you who know me well, which, by the way, is all of you or nearly all of you who have been listening to me for more than a year, and many of you have for 30 years. This is who I am. I am very real. I have a very strong commitment, strongest commitment to truth. Let me give you one example, and then I want to go to my guest, because this is a preface to the subject. Do you know that when I'm given ad copy and it says, Al, I want you to contact my friends at, if they're not my friends, they're just people I know and endorse, definitely, but they're not friends, I drop the word. Because I That's how much I'm a stickler for truth. So if I am concerned that this is not an honest election result, it does not come from the fact that I supported President Trump. It comes from the fact that we have to have an honest result. And there are too many anomalies taking place. All right, so let me introduce my guest in this regard. Professor of Law at UC Berkeley is John Yoo, Y-O-O. His new book is Defender-in-Chief, Donald Trump's Fight for Presidential Power. John Yoo, welcome back to the show.
Oh, hi, Dennis. Thanks for having me back.
Okay, what's your take?
Well, I think that, of course, there's still a path for Donald Trump to win. And I think it's important, as you say, that we make sure the votes are counted so that, one, we're counting valid votes, but two, that we're also making sure the right of people to cast their votes is respected. I think that we could eventually see this getting into court. It might even be a replay of Florida 2000, especially if it comes down to one state like Pennsylvania. The way I could see it easily happening is President Trump prevailing in Nevada or Arizona, where he's close, and then we've got a dispute over Pennsylvania because there already been games played in the state courts there to change the way ballots were counted and when they were due. And there's already a case pending at the U.S. Supreme Court. I know people don't want, and I certainly don't want, courts deciding who's going to be president. But when you have a really close election like this and you've had problems with the way the election was carried out, sooner or later, unfortunately, we're going to have to drag lawyers in.
So you're a professor of constitutional law, so I have a constitutional question. I really don't know the answer to this. I don't understand what jurisdiction the federal government has over any law a state passes with regard to elections.
It's interesting, and actually it falls back on our basic federal system of government, where a lot of things are a combination of the federal government and the state governments. And so here, the states have two functions guaranteed under the Constitution, not their own constitutions, but the U.S. Constitution. First, the state legislatures have the sole authority to decide how to pick presidential electors. Now, every state has decided to hand that off to popular election, but they still decide how that's done. Then separately, the state legislatures also have, under the Constitution, the right to set the time, places, and manner for the elections of Congress. And here's where the federal government gets involved again. Here it says Congress can overrule or preempt some of those time, places, and manners. But the courts get dragged in two ways. One is they want to make sure, I think, that the state legislatures are really being respected in their rights to set these rules. And then they've also been brought in the Bill of Rights and the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments in the sense that people have a right to vote. It's a one man, one vote principle. And so there's an individual right to vote that the courts are also also use as a justification to get involved in elections.
So let's go back to the judge's ruling in Pennsylvania that ballots can be counted until Friday, even though Tuesday is the deadline. It's or has been the deadline. It's called Election Day. He rules you can count ballots if you cannot make out the postmark. Is that a correct recitation of the ruling?
Yes, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said that votes were going to be accepted for 3 days after Election Day, even if they have no postmark.
Okay, so that had already been appealed to the Supreme Court. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And the Supreme Court decided not to hear the case.
yes, I think there's a lot of misperception about what the Supreme Court did. The Supreme Court didn't uphold or reject what the Pennsylvania
It didn't hear the
Supreme Court
case.
did. Yes, it's still pending.
It's still pending, but it is the law of Pennsylvania until the Supreme Court decides otherwise.
Yes.
So again, I ask, what right does the Supreme Court have to tell Pennsylvania's courts how to run their elections? Is it based on what you told me about Congress can modify rules of elections? I didn't follow where the Supreme Court has a right to get in.
So it comes, in fact, let me refer here to Justice Alito, who is the justice that oversees the circuit where Pennsylvania is located. And he's been urging the Supreme Court to take this case out of Pennsylvania. And he got 4 votes for this. He needs 1 more. And he explained it this way. He said, the Constitution says the state legislature, not the state, the legislature of the state. The Constitution does not often pick out the exact body within a state, but here it does. The state legislature has the sole right to decide how to pick the presidential electors. They set November 3 as the day. They said all the ballots have to be in on that day. So Justice Alito says state courts, the Pennsylvania court, has no role. They're not allowed to change that date because it's not just under the Pennsylvania Constitution. This is a control that's given to the legislature by the U.S. Constitution. So that's why Justice Alito says we've got to take this case.
That's a very powerful argument. Oh, so I've been asking almost the wrong question. It's not, does the U.S. Supreme Court have a right to rule anything with regard to Pennsylvania or any state's election laws? Does the Supreme Court of the state have the right?
Exactly. And so he, and this gets into some Supreme Court gamesmanship, but when the case came up from Pennsylvania, there were only 8 justices on the court because of Justice Ginsburg's passing. And so you need 5 justices to vote to take the case. Justice Alito had the agreement of Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh. But Chief Justice Roberts, who I am sure does not want the court to get involved if they can help it.
I have no doubt.
He would probably prefer the election is over and Pennsylvania doesn't matter and the Supreme Court is not going to decide anything. He voted with the 3 remaining liberal justices against hearing the case right away. And so this is a case where Justice Barrett can make all the difference.
Who made the original ruling then, if not the courts? Who made the original ruling in Pennsylvania with regard to fudged postmarks?
So this is what happened is Pennsylvania, and I'm from Pennsylvania. This is my home state. I grew up in Philly, spent the first 18 years of my life there. What happened there is the state legislature said after the pandemic occurred, we're going to be more generous. We're going to allow mail-in voting. 4 years ago, Pennsylvania used to be a state it was hard to do mail-in voting. 4 years ago, I believe there were only 84,000 mail-in votes. You have to show a reason why back then you needed mail-in vote. So the Pennsylvania legislature, which has the constitutional authority here, says, well, we're going to be more generous this time. We're going to allow mail-in voting. So in the primaries this year, there were 1.5 million mail-in votes. I mean, it's such an incredible number for Pennsylvania. And they said, and those ballots have to be due on Election Day, November 3rd. So actually the Democrats sued. And the Democrats sued basically themselves. The Democrats sued the governor, and basically the executive branch. They sued actually the Secretary of State, who's a Democrat. And they said, we want you to change the date. They actually asked to change the date 7 days past Election Day. And then the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, no, we're going to make it free.
All right, I got one more question. John Yoo, professor of constitutional law, UC Berkeley.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden campaign manager declared there is absolutely no scenario where President Trump will be declared the victor tonight. Listen to this audacious arrogance on Team Biden's side.
Just declaring victory without actually having won in the kind of states that we're talking about here is really basically trying to say that COVID is over, even though we know it's not. And all the evidence is saying that COVID in this country continues. And so we want to be clear with all of you. We want to make sure that we're having this dialogue and share with you what we're seeing, and that we also want to be fundamentally clear what we believe to be true. Under no scenario will Donald Trump be declared a victor on election night. And we think that that's really fundamental to how we want to approach tomorrow.
Oh, really? You say that yesterday. You know that, huh? Incidentally, the president shot this garbage down with a brief answer on Fox and Friends this morning.
At what point will you declare victory?
When there's victory. If there's victory, I think we'll have victory. I think the polls are, suppression polls, and I think we'll have victory, but only when there's victory. I mean, there's no reason to play games. And I think we'll have victory. I think I look at it as being a very, a very solid chance at winning. I don't know what the chances are. I don't know how they rate the chances, but I think we have a very solid chance of winning. And I think a lot of that has to do with the tremendous crowd size. But I mean, a small event. There was no small event. Every place, no matter where we went.
I consider that a good sign that the Democrats are proclaiming that there's no scenario where Trump can be declared the victor tonight.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
A lot of my friends are down today, and I've told them, don't be. Look what they had to do, assuming Joe Biden wins this election, and we still don't know that. There's some legal challenges left. In fact, the Trump campaign is now asking for a recount in Wisconsin. But assuming Biden wins this election, look what they, meaning the left, the Democrats, the media, academia, Hollywood, all big tech had to do to defeat this guy. They literally had to circle the wagons. They literally had to suppress the Hunter Biden story. They literally had to run with this bogus Trump-Russia collusion story for almost 3 years. They literally had to illegally acquire his income taxes, publish it in the New York Times during this very important stretch. By the way, whatever happened to the allegations that he had done something wrong, that he did something illegal? It wasn't about that. It was about embarrassing him because the left has trained people that rich people don't pay enough in taxes, even as the very same people complaining do everything they can to minimize their tax burden. But when rich people do it, somehow that's fraud, that's mean-spirited, that's selfish. This is what he has put up against. And all my life, I've heard this adage: never pick a fight with a newspaper that can buy ink by a barrel. This man picked a fight with an industry that can buy ink by a barrel and took on all of these people, took on the New York Times, took on the Washington Post. Nobody has popularized and convinced with good reason so many people that much of what they watch is literally fake news.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America.
Okay. All right, everybody. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show, professor of constitutional law at UC Berkeley. Is John Yoo. And John Yoo, I'd just like to note, has a new book, Defender in Chief, Donald Trump's Fight for Presidential Power. By the way, I think I always ask you this, but I'll ask you again. Are you sort of on the outs at Berkeley? I mean, when you walk into a room, do they stand up and cheer?
That would be an unusual experience that I've never had before. To be on the outs, I think you had to be on the ins at some point.
I'm not sure. No, you could be permanently on. You could start on the outs. Okay, so I think you answered my question. Fair enough. So I really love clarity. So I really want to get this for me and my listeners. The Supreme Court. Okay, the people. I'll start at the beginning. The people who make the rules on how a state votes is the legislature of that state. Is that correct?
Yes.
However, you threw in something I was not aware of, which is a little monkey wrench in my brain now. But the U.S. Congress can also intervene.
Yes.
Has it ever done so?
So when you read about laws like Congress giving out money for election security, trying to encourage people to secure their systems, that's the extent of it. Actually, Congress has been very reluctant to use this power. They generally defer to the states. That's why, as you've pointed out, then it's the states basically run the election systems, and most states push that down to the county level, and it's really the counties that are
okay. So then I'm back to my earlier question. I don't understand. Well, I guess I don't understand who passed the law with regard to fudgy, smudgy postmarks. Wasn't it the Pennsylvania legislature?
No, see, this is why you've put your finger on the constitutional problem. It was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that did it, not the legislature. And so if you're Justice Alito, you look at that and you say, where does the Pennsylvania Supreme Court get any right at all?
Yes, right.
That's the question.
But okay,
that,
all right.
But
why? Okay, that's a perfectly, unbelievably legitimate question. But why does the U.S. Supreme Court have a say in that?
Because they have to defend the right of the Pennsylvania legislature under the U.S. Constitution. It's the U.S. Constitution that says it's the Pennsylvania legislature that decides.
Oh, then I am stunned that 4 justices did not take the case.
Well, therefore, they need a fifth.
I know, no, I'm well aware of that, and they may now have a fifth. But I have to say, on prima facie, I just don't understand. I just threw that in because you're a lawyer. But on the face of it, isn't it obvious? This case, I mean, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania has as much right to determine electoral law in Pennsylvania as I do.
Yes, that's about right. According to the way these justices are reading it, you rarely see justices say this, but Justice Alito, with these other justices joining him, he said, I already think the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has violated our Constitution.
Right.
And this is a nationally important case, and we should intervene.
And what was the argument of the other 4?
They didn't say anything, but Justice Roberts later said, well, it sort of plays on your initial instinct on this. This is state courts, they're interpreting Pennsylvania law. We don't have a role. And that's why Justice Lewis said, but that's wrong, because it's actually the U.S. Constitution that says the legislatures decide. This is not under Pennsylvania law.
Right. Okay. Then there's the non-judicial question of how many envelopes came in with smudgy postmarks in Pennsylvania. In other words, is it a fight over principle rather than over effect?
That's interesting. You're quite right, Dan. There's 2 kinds of cases that are going to come out of Pennsylvania. One is, was it legitimate to change the date from November 3rd to November 6th? That's pending at the Supreme Court now. The other issue, which is going to have to be litigated, it's not at the Supreme Court. You're going to have to see cases filed right now at the trial level, which is, are the state officials, city, county officials who are in charge of counting the votes right now, are they doing it in a careful, legal way, or are you seeing shenanigans like, 10,000 votes all coming in for Biden and none for Trump from certain jurisdictions or for certain groups of mail-in ballots? You're hearing stories coming out. You're going to have to involve the courts there, too.
So what... I mean, I'm asking you for a prognosis, which is not entirely fair, but it's an educated prognosis. What could you see the Supreme Court of the United States having to rule on this year?
Interesting. So it depends whether Pennsylvania is crucial to the outcome of the election. Suppose Trump doesn't win Nevada and Arizona and Biden clinches without regard to how Pennsylvania goes. Biden doesn't need Pennsylvania. Then I could see the Supreme Court stepping back and saying, we don't need to decide this. It doesn't make any difference. Why get involved in the middle of this political fight when the Electoral College has already picked Biden? But if Pennsylvania becomes the state that determines the election, just like Florida 20 years ago, then I think the Supreme Court will decide that first issue, November 3rd date, being switched to November 6th without authority by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, especially if those votes that came in those 3 days
were
make
determinative
between Biden and Trump.
I actually think that it would be important and easier to take the Pennsylvania case or any other if it didn't determine the results nationally. Then they can't be accused of putting their thumb on the scale of the elections.
I agree. That would be good for the country that we have these rules settled.
Yes, I have that
instead
odd.
of
I
fighting
have
them
that
over
odd
20 years ago.
idiosyncrasy. I think what's good for the country.
But I don't think Chief Justice Roberts is thinking that way. I think he just wants the Supreme Court to be as small a political target as possible.
Right. That's
no
right.
matter what.
Yeah. Well, all right, my friend. You're a clarifier of issues. So, by the way, are you having classes now? What's your story at Berkeley?
Well, we are having classes by Zoom. I'm actually surprised more students, and more particularly their parents, are not filing for refunds.
I'm stunned.
This
is a sad statement I'm going to make, but the supine nature of the American people over lockdown laws and over tuition at colleges has actually saddened me.
But I think maybe the one good thing to come out of this is that people are going to now realize how much fat there was in the system. That they're paying for a lot of things they don't need.
You're my hero. John Yoo, as book defender-in-chief. I'm Dennis Prager. We continue.
This is Owen Strain for townhall.com. In the film No Country for Old Men, a sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones recounts a dream. He saw his father riding a horse going on ahead to make a fire somewhere out in all that dark and all that cold, and I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. The Coen brothers film wasn't political, but these words resonate today. Hopelessness abounds, lockdowns continue, marriages suffer, children languish, and politics divide. Many years ago, a wise man said to his followers that they should love their neighbor. Christ's words promise to galvanize us in the wake of a bitter election. We must love our neighbor in divided days. We should not fall prey to hate or insufferability. We should go on ahead and make a fire somewhere in the dark and work to prepare a better country for our children and for citizens yet to be born. I'm Owen Strain.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Biden campaign manager declared there is absolutely no scenario where President Trump will be declared the victor tonight. Listen to this audacious arrogance on Team Biden's side.
Just declaring victory without actually having won in the kind of states that we're talking about here is really basically trying to say that COVID is over, even though we know it's not. And all the evidence is saying that COVID in this country continues. And so we want to be clear with all of you. We want to make sure that we're having this dialogue and share with you what we're seeing, and that we also want to be fundamentally clear what we believe to be true. Under no scenario will Donald Trump be declared a victor on election night. And we think that that's really fundamental to how we want to approach tomorrow.
Oh, really? You say that yesterday. You know that, huh? Incidentally, the president shot this garbage down with a brief answer on Fox and Friends this morning.
At what point will you declare victory?
When there's victory. If there's victory, I think we'll have victory. I think the polls are, suppression polls, and I think we'll have victory, but only when there's victory. I mean, there's no reason to play games. And I think we'll have victory. I think I look at it as being a very, a very solid chance at winning here. I don't know what the chances are. I don't know how they rate the chances, but I think we have a very solid chance of winning. And I think a lot of that has to do with the tremendous crowd size. But I mean, a small event. There was no small event. Every place, no matter where we went.
I consider that a good sign that the Democrats are proclaiming that there's no scenario where Trump can be declared the victor tonight.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
A lot of my friends are down today, and I've told them, don't be. Look what they had to do, assuming Joe Biden wins this election, and we still don't know that. There's some legal challenges left. In fact, the Trump campaign is now asking for a recount in Wisconsin. But assuming Biden wins this election, look what they, meaning the left, the Democrats, the media, academia, Hollywood, all big tech, had to do to defeat this guy. They literally had to circle the wagons. They literally had to suppress the Hunter Biden story. They literally had to run with this bogus Trump-Russia collusion story for almost 3 years. They literally had to illegally acquire his income taxes, publish it in the New York Times during this very important stretch. By the way, whatever happened to the allegations that he had done something wrong?
All right, everybody, welcome to and back to the Dennis Prager Show. One of the most important writers on the American scene is Michael Anton. John Anton is also very important, but not nearly as important as Michael. Poor Michael. You take a risk coming on my show. I just want you to know that it's sort of a Russian roulette affair.
Yeah. I'll be fine.
I'm sure you will. Yeah. Anyway, Michael Anton is a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute. By the way, you guys put out the Claremont Review, is that correct?
Yes.
I just want everybody to know that I consider the Claremont Review of Books and the City Journal, Alan, am I right? He agrees. The two most important periodicals, and there are many. I want to make that clear. That are published today.
Well, appreciate that. I want to mention also Hillsdale College, which is my primary home base here. But I am also a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute.
So, are you in Michigan now?
No, we have a D.C. campus, and I teach at that campus.
Oh, I see. So you have you have a dark view of what is happening. By the way, your book, The Stakes, I am in the middle of it, and just the chapter on California alone, if I could have every American read that, then, I don't know if you know this, but I have a very, very important saying. For decades, the left ruins everything it touches. And you provide the evidence in California that is so depressing, and I hate using the word because then people won't read it, but people will survive. But you have to know what the left has done to California, and The Stakes makes that clear in the first chapter. So I just wanted to...
Thank you.
So you have written about this election. Why don't you summarize for my listeners your take?
Well,
I'm concerned about what's going on. I assume you mean the piece that I published yesterday.
Yeah, the American mind, the American
greatness. It looks like a pattern we've seen before, where when things get close in close states, especially close states with with Democratic statewide elected officials, chicanery happens. Ballots are found at the last minute that give just enough of a margin of error, and then there you go. So, this happened to Norm Coleman in Minnesota in 2008. It happened to the governor of Connecticut, or in the Connecticut gubernatorial race in 2010. There are, examples of this happening, and they never, at least I can't think of any, and I've asked people and I've searched, I can't think of any that favor Republicans.
That's right.
You say Florida
That's
2020, or sorry, 2000, but that was just a recount.
No, and that wasn't found ballots.
Right. So it looks very bad to me. There's all kinds of instances of things to be suspicious about, none of which, I think have great explanations, and they keep pouring in. People keep discovering, including some, reputable people, including some anti-Trump people. Nate Silver tweeted yesterday that one tranche of ballots that came in Pennsylvania literally were, I think it was 23,000 and some odd, with 0 Trump votes in it. I mean, so when statistical, not mere improbabilities, but virtual impossibilities pile up, you have to wonder. And I think it undermines confidence in the system when these things happen. And then those of us who point out that they're happening and say, hey, this is not good for confidence in the electoral system, we get attacked as conspiracy theorists and so on. So essentially the left's game is do whatever it takes, prevent any kind of transparency, and then accuse the other side of doing exactly what we're doing, which is manipulating the process. Twitter has already started to suppress and censor, people pointing out these irregularities and anomalies.
That's right. Well, Twitter is the worst of the social media at this time in terms of free speech and suppression of it. So I did not know Nate Silver had tweeted that out. That's very important. So I'm just curious, are they stupid? Do they not understand that 23,000 ballots without one for Donald Trump, everyone knows it's a fraud?
I don't know if they're stupid or if they just are brazen and think that we're in control and we can't be stopped. I think, unfortunately, if the latter is their calculation, my sense, painfully, sadly, is that they're probably right. I don't know how, when they control so much of all of the institutions.
All right, stay on with me if you would. Michael Anton, professor at Hillsdale and a fellow at the Claremont Institute. The book Stakes is great. Relief Factor is also great. That's the reason you hear their ads so often now on television, as well as many of my colleagues and myself. I don't know if they began with my show in radio, but we're certainly together a very long time. Because it works. It's a sort of a miracle. And they have a very important offer. They say it will, if it doesn't work in 3 weeks, it probably won't work for you. So they give you a very low price for 3 weeks, $19.95 plus shipping. Please give it a try. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
This is Owen Strain for townhall.com. In the film No Country for Old Men, a sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones recounts a dream. He saw his father riding a horse going on ahead to make a fire somewhere out in all that dark and all that cold, and I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. The Coen brothers film wasn't political, but these words resonate today. Hopelessness abounds, lockdowns continue, marriages suffer, children languish, and politics divide. Many years ago, a wise man said to his followers that they should love their neighbor. Christ's words promise to galvanize us in the wake of a bitter election. We must love our neighbor in divided days. We should not fall prey to hate or insufferability. We should go on ahead and make a fire somewhere in the dark and work to prepare a better country for our children and for citizens yet to be born. I'm Owen Strain.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The Biden campaign manager declared there is absolutely no scenario where President Trump will be declared the victor tonight. Listen to this audacious arrogance on Team Biden's side.
Just declaring victory without actually having won in the kind of states that we're talking about here is really basically trying to say that COVID is over, even though we know it's not. And all the evidence is saying that COVID in this country continues. And so we want to be clear with all of you. We want to make sure that we're having this dialogue and share with you what we're seeing, and that we also want to be fundamentally clear what we believe to be true. Under no scenario will Donald Trump be declared a victor on election night. And we think that that's really fundamental to how we want to approach tomorrow.
Oh, really? You say that yesterday. You know that, huh? Incidentally, the president shot this garbage down with a brief answer on Fox and Friends this morning.
At what point will you declare victory?
When there's victory. If there's victory, I think we'll have victory. I think the polls are, suppression polls, and I think we'll have victory, but only when there's victory. I mean, there's no reason to play games. And I think we'll have victory. I think I look at it as being a very, a very solid chance at winning. I don't know what the chances are. I don't know how they rate the chances, but I think we have a very solid chance of winning. And I think a lot of that has to do with the tremendous crowd size. But I mean, a small event. There was no small event. Every place, no matter where we went.
I consider that a good sign that the Democrats are proclaiming that there's no scenario where Trump can be declared the victor tonight.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
The latest is reported by Fox News and others that in Philadelphia they're not allowing Republicans into the counting sessions. And that's obviously part of what I'm talking to Michael Anton about. Michael Anton is a serious, truly serious thinker. And is his article up at DennisPrager.com? The article from yesterday, which is why I'm having him on. I just want you to know, Michael, that my producer, who is a voluminous reader, said that your book is the nonfiction book of the year.
Well, very kind. Thank you.
You and I share a deep concern about what the left is doing, what it does to every society that in which it gains power. Before we go on with the election, I'd just like to bounce a thought off you that I mentioned earlier in the show, and I had never mentioned it before because I mentioned it based on the results that we do have. So literally half the country, whatever the cheating might be, it won't change this. Half the country is anti-left. Half the country votes for the left. Whether they're left or liberal, they vote for the left.
Yep.
So what is remarkable is that 67 million Americans have allowed all of the mainstream media, all of the universities, virtually, obviously Hillsdale not included, 99% of the universities, 99% of mainstream media, 99% of Hollywood, 99% of Broadway, 99% of the arts to be taken over by the other half. That's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Yes. It took a long time. I mean, it's partly you could trace this back to deliberate strategies outlined earlier in the 20th century, and it took a very long time, and it happened also in part by stealth. I think the long march through the institutions, as it's been described. Nobody goes in saying this is what we're going to do. We're going to take it over and change it in this way. They do it gradually. They do it carefully. They try to do it by stealth. And then there also came a phase when it became obvious what was going on, that people said, like in the universities, well, nothing to worry about. They can be a little kooky, but we out here in the real world, well, we won't be bothered by what's going on in the universities. This was kind of the conservatives' attitude in the 80s and 90s. Although conservatives raised the alarm that this was terrible, and they didn't have any illusions about how bad it was, but they didn't think or at least underestimated the spillover effects that would have on the broader society. Now we find ourselves in 2020 having lost pretty much every institution in American public, civic, social, cultural, intellectual life in a very, very bad position. And the one thing the conservatives had, or middle Americans had, or red Americans, rural Americans, whatever you want to call them, was Trump. And now they're on the cusp of losing him.
Well, so here is an idea I'd like to bounce off you, and that is regarding Trump and America, and especially his supporters. So something I have said for about 20 years, America is in a civil war, but only one side is fighting. And I have said that thanks to Donald Trump, both sides are fighting. What do you think of that?
I think that's partly true, but we were still, it was an unequal fight given the inequality of the forces arrayed. It's one thing for Trump to come and fight, but I mean, even controlling the White House doesn't mean that he controlled the federal government. And he found, to his dismay, and the great difficulty he had governing throughout his first term because of being constantly attacked and undermined from within. And then you take that, you look around at these other external institutions, and they're all against him. And obviously they still are. They're even more against him today. I mean, Fox News seems to have flipped. It was sort of gradually drifting in an anti-Trump direction over the course of the last 6 months.
Which, by the way, it's financially stupid on their part. People are not stupid. 35 years of radio, I learned very, very early on, people are not stupid. They may be foolish, a whole host of things. They may even be bad human beings. But there are very few stupid people. And the Fox News listener is not stupid. And so they'll watch Tucker, and they'll watch one or two others, and that's it. I don't. Why would I want CNN Light?
Yep. Well, that seems the way they're going, and we'll see if they pay any kind of financial price for that. I don't know.
Oh, they will. Yes, there's no question that they will. But anyway, back to the election. What you made a very important point. They probably cheat. We say you probably cheated, and then we're called conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. Well, the issue is, at least for me, I've actually talked to a few friends over the past couple of days. Most of my friends agree with me. They think what I think I'm seeing, they think they're seeing. A few have said no, not convinced. And what they want is some kind of proof. And the problem that I have with that, which I admit is a problem, right, is I can't think of, there's so few instances when this is ever proved, precisely because the people who would have to do the investigation are either the same people who did the fraud or are in the same power structure, same party, same side, and everything, and there's no appetite for doing any kind of investigation. I think it's been fairly well established, and I read a post the other day on Powerline about Norm Coleman, that Coleman himself, a sober-minded lawyer and former United States Senator, believes that his race was stolen from him in 2008. In the power structure that is Minnesota, there's no way to delve into that and figure it out. There's no appetite for it among the people who pulled it off or who run the state, and so it's never proved. And then they can say forever that we're the people who think that these things happen are crazy conspiracy theorists and try to discredit us. I guess at the end of the day, I freely admit, I can't prove it.
I know that, and I thank you. Read his book, The Stakes, Michael Anton.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Whether it's packing the Supreme Court,
Not going to happen.
whether it's lowering the voting age,
Not
whether
gonna
it's
happen.
making Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. new states.
Not going to happen.
That is a sucking chest wound. That is an injury to the Democrats, the likes of which, look, we are safe on those issues now.
Not to mention the entire cabinet, if we lose the presidency,
Yes.
now has to go through advise and consent through the U.S. Senate.
Of the Senate.
And so instead of Elizabeth Warren becoming Treasury Secretary, they'll just get another Goldman Sachs banker. Like, okay, fine,
Right, or
whatever.
Bernie Sanders become the Secretary of Labor.
Precisely.
Right.
That dog is not going to hunt in the Mitch McConnell Senate. And so we should have lost.
We were told that we were going to lose.
Let's just be honest. We were outspent like 5-1.
Yes.
We had our stuff censored on social media.
The president was censored.
Everyone was censored. Yeah. We went through a shutdown, a lockdown, a virus that we were getting blamed for politically.
Yes.
They had Black Lives Matter plastered on the NBA finals, every person watching that. BLM Incorporated riots. We were supposed to lose.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is now close is an interruption of the plans for Joe Biden and the Democrat ruling class.
Look, it's incredibly important to inject that positive tone into what we're doing right now. I switched on Rush's show this morning, and he was all about, we can win this. Doesn't matter whether it's Arizona or Pennsylvania. We have the figures. I heard all the great calculations from the campaign manager today. I want your response. For me, from my perspective, you have a much better grasp of things at the grassroots level across the country because of that incredible thing called Turning Point USA you created. But for me, it's down to who has the better lawyers and who has more guts.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Owen Strain for townhall.com. In the film No Country for Old Men, a sheriff played by Tommy Lee Jones recounts a dream. He saw his father riding a horse going on ahead to make a fire somewhere out in all that dark and all that cold, and I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. The Coen brothers film wasn't political, but these words resonate today. Hopelessness abounds, lockdowns continue, marriages suffer, children languish, and politics divide. Many years ago, a wise man said to his followers that they should love their neighbor. Christ's words promise to galvanize us in the wake of a bitter election. We must love our neighbor in divided days. We should not fall prey to hate or insufferability. We should go on ahead and make a fire somewhere in the dark and work to prepare a better country for our children and for citizens yet to be born. I'm Owen Strain.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy, impacting policy decisions today, preparing public leaders for tomorrow. Learn more at publicpolicy.pepperdine.edu. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The Biden campaign manager declared there is
Okay, everybody. Dennis Prager here. Don't hang up, folks, because if you do, I can't see what you're called in with regard to. By the way, it's regard, not regards. Regards is give my regards to Harry when you see him. Bridget in Delwood, Minnesota, and her experience as a Republican volunteer. I want to call me tomorrow, Bridget. I really, really want to get your experience. She's had as a volunteer in this regard. Bev, Livonia, Michigan. Trump was 67% ahead in her county, and now it's 0-0. It's very scary stuff. Let's see here. Lucas in Long Island, New York. If Biden wins by fraud, where do we go from there?
absolutely no scenario
where
President Trump will be declared
we have to pass laws
Listen
in states
to
that
this
ensure
audacious
transparency,
arrogance
but
on
the
Team
Democrats,
Biden's
if
side.
they're in charge,
Just
will not
declaring
allow such
victory
laws.
without actually having won.
The truth
in
is,
the kind
the
of
question,
states, that we're talking
or a
about
question
here,
is, what do we do,
really
period?
basically trying to say that COVID is
If
over,
Joe
even though we know
Biden
it's
wins
not,
honestly
and all
or
the
not
evidence is
honestly,
saying that COVID in this
question is,
country
what do we do?
continues. And
And
so
the
we want to be
immediate
clear with
answer
all
is
of you.
we
We want to
fight.
make sure that we're having
You
this
have-
dialogue
the
and share
first
with
thing
you
is
what we're
conservatives
seeing,
have to come
and
out
that
of
we
hiding.
also
You
want to
now
be
know you have
fundamentally clear what
67
we
million
believe to be
allies.
true. Under no scenario will Donald Trump be
The
declared
second
a
thing
victory,
you have
a
to
victor
do is
on
pull your
election
kid out
night,
of
and we
school.
think that that's really fundamental to how we want
Unless
to
the
approach
school
tomorrow.
is wonderful, and they're,
Oh, really?
they,
You
they,
say that
they do
yesterday.
exist.
You know
They're a
that, huh?
minority.
Incidentally, the president
That's
shot
the
this garbage
greatest
down
thing we could.
with a
We
brief
have to
answer on
opt
Fox
out
and
of the
Friends this
corrupted
morning.
institution.
At what point will you declare victory?
There's no reason for most of
When
your kids
there's
to go to
victory,
college,
if there's victory,
or
I think,
at least not
I think
to a
we'll have
normal college.
victory. I think
They
the
are an
polls
intellectual wasteland, and
suppression
they will,
polls, and I think we'll have
in half
victory,
the cases,
but only when there's
alienate
victory.
your
I mean,
child
there's no
from
reason to play games.
everything you hold precious,
And I think
maybe
we'll have
even
victory.
from
I think we're, I look at it as being
67
a
million
very,
of us. If
a very solid chance at winning.
1%
I don't
acted
know what the
on
chances
this,
are. I
it
don't know
would
how
be-
they
it
rate
would
the
be
chances,
a
but I think we have a very solid chance of winning. And I think a lot of that has to do with the.
And JD's
tremendous
a
crowd
truck
size.
driver,
I
also
mean,
in
a
Michigan.
small
White
event,
Pigeon,
there was no
what a
small
great
event.
city.
Every place, no matter where we went.
Here's about
I consider
suspicious
that a good
voting
sign that the
activity on the
Democrats
road.
are proclaiming
I'd like
that
to hear
there's
from
no
you as well.
scenario where Trump can be declared
Roger
the
in
victor.
Kaufman, Texas wants to know how half
Keep
the
up
country
with what's
can run
trending.
the show.
Subscribe on YouTube today.
Because that's their life. Conservatives have a disadvantage.
Trending now
We have
on the
lives
Larry
that
Elder Show.
transcend the political. We're happy.
A lot of my
All right,
friends are
everybody,
down today,
Dennis Prager here.
and
See
I've
you
told them,
tomorrow.
don't be. Look what they had to do